All right, fans, we're here. It's time. Are you excited? Some of you are not excited, and I understand that. Some of you are, no matter what, there would be nothing that would excite you. Certainly not about this fight, and I truly do understand that. But I'm going to share my feelings, and I do think that you should be excited because I do think that it's a good event overall. We got quite a few fights on docket. So I do think for if you're a boxing fan as opposed to a mark, I do think it's good. I do think that it's worth your time, right? As I've said, I honestly think that our events are going to be really good. And if you have the patience for them, and I'm honest on this, but if you have the patience for them, I think you're going to find that you're going to be excited, you're going to be entertained. There's going to be some good stuff happening that is going to it's not going to reignite. If you've lost kind of the spirit of boxing, you're kind of frustrated, Crawford Duck Spence and that kind of stuff, you're not going to be changed over one night. But what I'm saying is there's enough going on. There's for boxing fans that it at least shows they're trying, if nothing else. And hopefully we're getting past the era of some of this nonsense where they're just not, pushing hard enough to make fights happen. So with that said, of course, the top fight on docket, the return of Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez fighting John Ryder. Canelo getting major criticism for taking the fight simply because John Ryder has 5 losses. John Ryder, I believe, lost to Rocky Fielding, who, of course, Canelo took out. I think there's a couple things to really consider. He is getting older, this is true, but he's still in the peak. I think physical condition overall, he's only 32 years old. Ryder is a little bit older, but Ryder's southpaw. And again, southpaws always seem to play a factor, and I don't think you should dismiss it. Ryder also has a reach advantage over Canelo that's playing in. And then Canelo had the loss to Bivol, which I do think that will mentally play for him. Of course, he did rebound, but I don't know that, to me, I don't see a reason Canelo loses. But the point is, I think that loss to Bivol might have affected him in some way, because if you think about Canelo's most recent fight, he goes the distance when he really should have got a knockout win. In my opinion, I'm just going to call it like I see it. I think he should have gotten a knockout win. He didn't get a knockout win. So was that a factor from what happened off Bivol? I don't know. I'm saying that it could be. So people expected by and large that the version of Golovkin that Canelo fought, this is his most recent fight, it's 2022, Golovkin should have easily been knocked out by Canelo. Instead, Canelo couldn't get him out of there. Now, it was a masterclass, and Golovkin had no chance whatsoever. But people were concerned about why it was that he was not able to get Golovkin out of there, that version of Golovkin. And it just goes to show, Golovkin clearly does have a solid chin for what it is, but it felt like Canelo, as forward as he was, didn't seem to have the same fire, I guess is the way I'm putting it. So I think he needs to get a knockout in spectacular fashion against John Ryder. I think he can do it. I think it'll give him a little bit of time to get some feel out before he gets to that point. But I do think it's a fight worth watching. It's certainly not going to move the needle. It's for all the belts. It's super middleweight, so we have to watch and see where that one goes. Meanwhile, separate events on Fight TV and Sky Sports. Fight TV in the U.S., Sky Sports in the U.K. Josh Buatsi fighting Powell Stapien. 12 rounds of light heavyweight. Both guys undefeated. Both guys orthodox styles. I think this will be a boring fight. It's in Birmingham at the Guinea Arena, but I think it's going to be boring. I don't think it's going to be very interesting of a fight, personally. Now, I could get it wrong. I could get completely wrong because, Buatsi he's been a knockout artist. I just think that Stapien is good enough where he's not going to go anywhere. Stapien has more experience than Buatsi, so I just don't think it's going to be that exciting of a fight. I could get it completely wrong, but it feels like it's not going to be that very exciting of a fight. The undercard of that event has 2 events I see. There's probably more, but there's 2 events I see. I'm going to breeze through these real fast. So this is all UK action, by the way. As I said, Sean McComb fighting Kaisi Benjamin. I'm not aware or familiar with either guy. McComb is a southpaw. Neither guy are knockout artists. Both guys are coming off losses. Experience is roughly the same. So I don't think this is going to be very interesting at all, personally. That's super lightweight action. I don't think it moves the needle. I don't even know how to call it because, again, I'm not familiar with either guy and I don't want to do a disservice. Women's action, Lauren Price fighting Kirsty Babington. Not familiar with Babington. Babington strikes me just visually like, somebody's mom said, I want to start boxing now, all of a sudden. And I know that's sad, but that's what I see. Not just from face, but record. She doesn't have that stellar record at all. Price is she's older. She's not old. She's in her 20s, but she's late 20s. And she hasn't been doing this very long. So I I don't know. This one is hard because, again, experience wise, Babington's way up there, but Price seems to have better skill. Neither are knockout artists. I don't think it's going to move the needle. So if you want to check that one out, that's on that same undercard. The other big fight I would say out in Russia, and I know people are against Russia because of the media, but I'm going to call it because if you're a boxing fan, you should be interested, at least somewhat. Magomed Kurbanov fighting Michel Soro. I'm familiar with both guys. I see no reason Kurbanov doesn't completely blow Soro out. Soro's kind of getting up there in age. Soro has significantly more experience, but he's just getting up there in age. I don't think it's a skill thing. I think he's too old and he's not going to be able to get Kurbanov off him. I think Kurbanov's going to blitz him and possibly get a stoppage win is my guess. Kurbanov's been going the distance recently. It's not about Kurbanov that I say my prediction. It's about Soro. That's super welterweight action if you're interested in that one. Then we got Gabriel Valenzuela, versus Steve Spark. I'm aware of Steve Spark, good fighter, really good. He's a good guy and a good fighter. I like watching him. I'm not familiar with Valenzuela. Just on the numbers, though, Valenzuela has significantly more skill. Valenzuela has more reach. He has a reach advantage. They're roughly the same age. I think the one factor that leans against Valenzuela is the fact that he had a loss recently. He bounced back, got a stoppage. And then Sparks, most recently, it was a DQ win for him, so he wasn't able to get it done. But Spark has been on a knockout tear. That's why, stoppage, knockout tear, which is partially why I think he's a good dude. Seems like Sparks wanted to kind of go balls to the wall to try to get it done. And then the last one, it was a DQ, but it was a win in his favor. So I'm leaning, again, towards Spark. Valenzuela seems like a decent, good fighter, and has the experience edge. I just think Sparks is going to be too much for Valenzuela. Is my call on that one. Another fight I'm personally excited about. I don't know about anybody else. This is out in Mexico, Zapopan, Mexico, to be specific. 10 rounds at light heavyweight. Alexander Vozdik taking on Richard Bolotnitz. I'm a big fan of Vozdik. I think that Vozdik, before he retired, because he retired for a stretch after he fought Beterbiev, right? But before he retired, he was one of the two killers. And then when the two of them met, it was a great fight. I think he's a good dude. I think he came back and he's come back on a tear. He's been doing good stuff. He's not nearly as welcoming of risk, I guess, as he used to be, which is good because he's up there in age. So I think his new style bodes well for him to still make a few waves, but he is getting up there in age. I do think he deals with Bolotnick, because Bolotnick he's coming off a stoppage loss, and while he was on a tear prior to his stoppage loss, and while he's a decently good fighter, there are many other factors that favor Vozdik, not just numbers, but just overall style. In my opinion, I think Vozdik deals with him. I could get that wrong, and Bolotnick could shock me, but I think Vozdik's going to be too much for him, in my opinion. Then we got 12 rounds at flyweight action, also on this undercard. Julio Cesar Martinez versus Ronald Batista. I'm not familiar with Batista. I am familiar with Martinez. Martinez is a good fighter, very good fighter, but he's had a rough time of it lately. He's had a really rough time of it. Very rough time of it. He's off a win, but it took him a bit to get that win, and then there was a loss before that, and then no contest. So he's had a rough time of it. He's a young guy. He can rebuild. I think jumping into this fight is good for him for one reason. Batista doesn't have very much experience overall, and Batista is not the kind to try to get you out of there. So I think it's good. It's a good rebuild fight for Martinez. But Batista could pull it out. I just don't see it, in my opinion. I think Martinez deals with it. Personal opinion on that one. Then we've got, and I'm not going to try to pronounce, Jora Hamzarian. I hope I did that right. Versus Francisco Fonseca. This is in Russia, by the way. 10 rounds of lightweight action. I'm aware of Fonseca, of course. I'm not aware of Hamzarian. Both guys have a rough bit of past fights. I I don't even know how to call this one because I look at the numbers and Fonseca should just dispatch this guy with ease. But Fonseca, he has been on a very steep decline, and I truly don't understand why. Specifics of why he's had some problems, and so it's one where Hamsarai could just pull something out and get the W probably by decision because Fonseca, just to back it up, so Fonseca got knocked out last fight, first round knockout. He went to a majority draw prior. He got outboxed prior, knocked out in 8 prior. It just something's off. I don't know what it is, where he's not performing at the level that he used to before. So I think he's a good dude, but something's off with him, and that's why I say Hamza Ryan could pull something out. And if he does, I think Fonseca should call it quits because that's not good at this point for your health. Then we got let's see, Ezekiel Maderna versus Willie Hutchinson. This is in the UK, London, York Hall. 10 rounds of light heavyweight action. I'm not familiar with either guy. I probably should be familiar with Hutchinson, but I'm not. I like his his ring gear and his appearance, but I'm not familiar with either guy. Hutchinson's the younger one of the two. You would think that Hutchinson, because Maderna is really much older, he's a lot older. He got knocked out last fight. He got outboxed before that. He got stopped before that. So he is already at the end, is Maderna. You would think Hutchinson should deal with him in ease, and that's what I think, because of age mostly. But Hutchinson was recently stopped, most recently, and that messes with your mind. So I'm not guaranteeing anything. I'm saying that that's what could very well happen. I don't even know how to call it, but Hutchinson's probably going to be my lean on that one. A fight got snuck in. This is cruiserweight action, 10 rounds. York Hall, London. These might even be happening right now. This is BT Sport if you want to check it out. Ellis Zorro versus Hosea Burton. I'm familiar with Hosea Burton. He's a little bit older. Came off a stoppage just his last fight. Zorro, I think, should deal with him with ease. Even though Zorro has way less experience, I think Zorro's just going to be too much for Burton. Burton feels like he's peaked and he's on the way down, is my guess. I don't have a firm on that one because, again, I don't want to do them disservice. The last one I see, women's action, Kim Clavel versus Naomi Reyes. This is in Canada, actually. Junior flyweight action, 10 rounds. Fight TV if you want to check it out. So they tossed the girls on the Fight TV and didn't even put on the big stuff. So then, looking at this one analysis, I'm aware of Clavel, of course. This one I'm not sure, because on the numbers, only the numbers, other than one number, but everything else, Clavel should dispatch this girl in easy work fashion. Clavel came off a loss. She recently lost. But Clavel has more experience. Clavel has a significant reach advantage. They're about the same height, which I find hard to believe because I think Clavel's a little bit taller, but all the numbers they're the same height. But Clavel has a significantly longer reach advantage, and just overall experience rounds in the books. She should easily deal with her. I don't see a different outcome on that one. That's what I see on docket. And then just to wrap up, a couple of things. I'm going to be doing an separate update about this Boots Ennis situation. Sorry, I had to yawn. Boots Ennis is being accused of something. I'm going to chat about that on a different video. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, be sure to check that out when that gets posted.